Hello, it's Debbie Gilbert from the Business Awards show, and I'm also the founder of the Best Businesswomen Awards. Now, we held our final a couple of weeks ago on the 11th of October, our 10th anniversary. So I've been, off podcasting recordings for a few weeks now, obviously trying to get everything done for the awards. So I'm delighted to be joined by our gold winner for Best Coach 2024, the lovely Mary Gregory from Mary Gregory Coaching and Facilitation. And you are, Mary, the first gold winner from 2024 to be on the podcast.
Thank you so much. And when you say the gold winner, I still get a tingle down my spine. I'm kind of still in a bit of disbelief about it, to be honest.
Well, Mary, you've had a very long career in leadership coaching.
I have.
So I think the best person to talk about that is you. So tell us what took you into leadership coaching.
Okay. Well, my background, originally my background is very embedded in psychology and understanding human nature and how we function, but also I've done an MSc in change, which means I understand the dynamics of what goes on in organizations and how we can show up. And so I also found myself during my career heading up training and development for a big tour operator, First Choice Holidays, who are now part of TUI. And that's when I first started getting into leadership development and management development, supporting our leaders across the globe. Actually, it was a very nice job. Actually, I got to travel all over the world, but supporting them in being able to lead, manage, and motivate their people. And that's what first piqued my interest. But I would say also, I've always been motivated by development and people's development. So even in my early days, when I worked in child and family psychiatry, it was all about helping people grow, helping people fulfill their potential.
So what made you go out on your own?
So very good question. I've been out on my own twice, actually, in different iterations. And the first time I was still working in tour operating and felt I wanted to diverse into another type of organization, and finding it increasingly difficult and didn't want to get pigeonholed. So I then took the courageous step, which is a bit of a pattern of mine, that I take courageous steps and then suddenly think, oh, why am I doing this? But I took this courageous step and went out on my own. And in those days, there weren't very many of people like me around. We're talking about in the 90s. There weren't many coaches or leadership consultants around. So it actually was very easy through my network to develop relationships and get work with other consultancies as well as with direct clients as well. So that's when I first went out on my own. Then I also felt there was a need, when you're out on your own, being independent as a consultant, you can easily lose sight of what it's like being in an organization. So there was a turning point when my daughter got to 15, and I kind of felt like my business had served me to support her as she grew up, but she was now at the stage of not really needing me so much. So I thought, oh, well, maybe I fancy a career in the corporate world. So I went back into the corporate world, which is where I worked for Ralph Lauren and Tesco, and then latterly Penna as a board and exec coach with them, which again gave me much more depth in my experience and also understanding what it's like to be part of a big organization.
And then you left there.
I left there, yes. Thank you. Thank you for the prompts. Thank you for the prompts. Yes, I left there and set up on my own. And actually, through my corporate experience, the second half, I had 2 redundancies. So that also helped me learn about what it's like to face adversity. And although the first both redundancies, I would have rather they hadn't happened. But the first one particularly was a very rich learning curve for me and really helped me understand the power of purpose, which again is very linked to leadership. And that also helped me navigate the second redundancy, which is in 2016 when I set up again to go independent and set up Mary Gregory Leadership Coaching and Facilitation.
Fabulous. Now, you've written a book about ego. So you have a real special interest in ego. And I think you're kind of out there on your own in that, because I've certainly not seen any other coaches talking about this. So Mary, talk me through Get Over Yourself and Lead, and why this whole ego thing is so important for leaders to understand and recognize their ego traps.
Yeah. So for me, and for many of the clients that I work with, the reason I chose to write about ego was a common theme and thread, not only in my own life and developing my own business, but also in the leaders that I work with. And I have a niche in women leaders as well. And often we as women might say, oh, I haven't got a big ego. We often don't have big egos, but we still have an ego. So, and the things that hold us back is so frequently ourselves. And often we'll choose our survival mode, which is kind of our automatic pilot that we launch into when we're triggered by something or whatever. And so I felt that really a key element of leadership, it's a basic foundation of leadership, is understanding yourself and self-awareness. And actually, if you see yourself as a leader, and particularly if you're wanting to lead a larger or even a small or medium-sized business, you've got to have an understanding of who you are. What are the things that you do that will help you be effective, but also what are the things that you can do that limit you, so you can minimize those. And all of that is part of your ego. And it does get talked about, but it often gets talked about in a very negative way. So there's actually another book out called Ego is the Enemy, which on one level you could say the sort of shadow side of ego can be difficult, can hold us back. And in the press, it's also, you think about, when we talk about ego, we often talk about the overinflated, she was very dominating, all they did was talk about themselves, they're all full of themselves. That's kind of the traditional or global view of what ego is, but it's so much more than that. And particularly when I think about how women may be, is that often we hold ourselves back, we stop ourselves from speaking up. And let other people dominate. And that is still our ego, because what our ego is our defense mechanism. It helps soothe us and keep us safe from social anxiety. That's the bottom line of what it is. So it can be things that are underplayed. So it's like our inflated ego, as well as our overinflated ego. And the traps that I talk about in my book I think I talk about 6 to 8 traps. But there are lots of them. I'm not going to say those are the only traps there are. We've all got our own unique traps. But there are things that will stop us being our best selves by holding us back, by minimizing ourselves. And they're also the things that cause us to maybe dominate and take control and try to be the center of attention or whatever it is. Those things will equally hold us back. Because at the bottom, the other thing about leadership is it's about relationships. And if you're going to be dominant and not really care about other people, then you're not going to be building very positive relationships. Equally, if you're staying quiet and not standing up for yourself, you're not going to be building very healthy, positive relationships. And that, for me, is the core of how you create yourself as a leader, but also how you create a positive team around you as well.
So what are the most common ego traps that you see when you go in to work with leaders?
Oh, right. Okay. So thinking about the business world, there are several that the first and foremost, actually, particularly when I get to more senior leaders, and this is something that really got to try and work at overcoming, is what I would call is solo flight, which is all about, I can do it myself. I don't ask for help. I've got to be strong. And you've got that kind of ego trap if you're the sort of person that just keeps going, and then when you go on holiday you get ill. That's a classic sign that that's an ego trap that you have. And it's usually, the thing about our ego traps is they're linked to our embedded beliefs from when we're young children. So you probably grew up, it may have been messages in your family, it may have been something that you picked up at school, who knows, but you've grown up somewhere with a message that you can't show weakness, you've got to keep going. And, you'll be the sort of person in the office who'll be fantastic at helping others. And people will love being able to come to you because you're so reliable and they know that you'll help them. But then you're not so good at asking for help yourself. So that is a very, very common one. Another one is linked to not being able to always wanting to get it perfect. Yeah. I can see some things are resonating with you here. So that's kind of a never good enough ego trap. So no matter how brilliantly you do, you never own up to the fact that it's actually you've done a really good job there. You're always looking for how it could be done better. And I'm not saying checking in on ourselves, looking at how we can keep improving is a bad thing. But when it's at the cost of your own resilience, at your own sense of well-being, that you push yourself so hard, and not just yourself, but the people who work with you, and that's really, really important. You usually know when you've got a leader who is really, everything is never good enough. They're running this, it has to be perfect, because they'll be quite controlling of the people who work with them. And that can be very soul destroying for those people as well, because part of leadership is about empowering others. And therefore, you've got to learn to trust others. If this is your ego trap, you've got to learn to trust others and empower them, and trust that they can find their own way. And it might, surprise, surprise, be better than how you might have approached it in the first place. It really opens up the whole innovation element as well. If you let people, give them their head, let them do it their way, see what opens up, see what happens. So those are just a couple, but there are lots more.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I've read the book and I can thoroughly recommend it. So we will make sure we put the details into the show notes. Mary, I mean, not only do you coach leaders, but you also took this another stage further. And during lockdown, you interviewed 50 different leaders, didn't you? Lessons in leadership.
I did.
Talk me through that, because that must have been a fascinating exercise.
Well, I suppose my motivation, I mean, it was kind of coincided with the publication of my book, which came out in lockdown. Perfect timing. It came out in lockdown, so I thought, how can I keep the energy around my book and around me going? And I'm always curious about leaders' journeys, and I'm also really curious about authenticity and what is your authentic journey. So my whole intention of running those 50 episodes was to really explore what was a turning point moment for you that really informed you as a leader. No one of those aha moments of the light suddenly switches on, that really informed who you are as a leader and still influences the way you show up today. And it was fantastic. I mean, I started off approaching people in my network, as you do, thinking, oh, they'd be an interesting person to speak with. And got some great interviews straight away. And then as it started to build momentum, I actually got approached by quite a few leaders. So I've got people who are leaders of small businesses. I've got fellow coaches who are also running their own businesses and maybe have a certain perspective on life that they can offer. I've also got CEOs in there and operational directors and things. So people from bigger businesses in the corporate world. So it's a whole plethora. Is that the right word? Plethora or selection of leaders from small, medium and large organizations, just sharing their stories.
And there are some fascinating nuggets. Some of them have been repurposed into LinkedIn articles, haven't they?
Yes, they
People
have.
can head over to your LinkedIn profile and read some of them, because they are really interesting. And, there is a common thread, isn't there, that runs through all of them, I think. And that is leaders tend to have that tenacity, don't they, to keep going.
The resilience and tenacity,
Resilience
and tenacity, but also that ability to listen to others in order to really engage and get people on board. And, compassion, self-compassion being really important, but also compassion and empathy for others as well.
Because listening is actually a skill, isn't it?
It is a skill. As human beings, we tend to love the sounds of our own voices. And I'm probably a great example here of loving the sound of my own voice. But in leadership, actually, the most effective leaders are those that really, really listen, not just to the people that they're leading on their team, but also to their stakeholders, be they customers, be they suppliers, whoever they are, being able to really listen from a place of really wanting to understand, because there's different ways that we can listen. So these are a few tips in terms of how we can tend to listen. One is that we listen what I would call level 1 listening, where we're listening with our own agenda. So I might be listening to you, but really what I'm thinking is, oh yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to raise this in my point to Debbie as she's speaking to me. So that's not really listening. You're listening to your own internal voice. Another is listening. You might not have your own agenda, but you've still got things you want to make sure you get across in the conversation. And then the final way, the deepest level of listening is listening from just purely being present with somebody. And that is, for me, that's the most powerful listening. As a coach, that's the listening that I keep developing and work. I probably work on my presence and listening more than any other skill in terms of coaching, because that's where you really support your clients to access their inner potential. So listening from no agenda at all.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. So I think awards are quite intrinsically linked with ego.
They are, on one level, you could say.
On one level, because I've often had people say to me, oh, I couldn't possibly enter awards, only people with big egos do things like that. I've actually had that said to me.
That's still their ego, Debbie. Exactly. That's that underinflated ego.
Underinflated. Yeah. And then sometimes it takes me a bit of an explanation to make people understand and maybe see awards slightly differently, as a business competition, really, as a way of getting validation and recognition for the work that you do from a panel of business experts who assess your business from all the different perspectives. So talk me through your thought process to entering awards, because the Best Businesswomen Awards wasn't the first awards that you'd entered.
It's not.
Talk me through what your thoughts were and when did it sort of start appearing on your radar?
So I would say I fell into the category of, it's only big-headed people who enter awards, probably. And who am I to enter an award? And, I definitely the underinflated ego, playing small part initially was probably how I approached it. And then my eyes started to be opened by people in my network who I was engaged with, who were doing it. And I mean, at the end of the day, we've got to be realistic about our businesses, particularly when you're running a small business or a small consultancy like I am. You have to think about how you market it. And there are hundreds of different ways of marketing your business. And I think awards are a very effective way of doing it. Not only marketing it, but also building your authority. Because I think that, I know with your awards, Debbie, that the judging is very, very thorough. And so it's no mean feat to actually put yourself forward for that. So you are putting yourself, you have to be willing to be vulnerable to put yourself forward for that judging. I personally don't see them as competitive. I think that it's if anything, it's a stretch of myself to put myself out there. And my first entry was with the National Facilitator Awards last year, which I'd say I had a mixed experience of, because it was my first time that I put myself out there. I did get shortlisted, and I also got shortlisted for 2 awards, the Live Facilitator of the Year and the Values led Facilitator of the Year, which I really felt pleased about, because there were 2 elements that I really wanted to showcase myself in, I suppose. And so that experience, it was mixed for me, because I didn't know many people there. I took a lot of friends along to the dinner, so I had a bit of moral support. And I don't know whether they're even running anymore now, actually. I haven't seen a repeat year of them, but overall, it did open my eyes to the possibility of what awards could do. And then this year, I think again, I hesitated a bit about entering this year. But then I found, isn't it funny how the universe works? My diary was suddenly, I had time in my diary, and there was the deadline for the Best Businesswomen Awards. I thought, I'll give it a go. So I gave it a go. And I tell you, I mean, both for the national, so what my entry for the National Facilitators Award, both entries, I mean, the entry for that one helped me start to compose the one for the Best Business. So you start to build, I guess, on your acumen of what you've got there. But I think what it did for me, particularly the entry for this set of awards, was I hadn't really taken an overview of my business and how it had grown and what my goals were and how much I'd achieved them until I wrote the award entry. I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, I said I wanted to shift from working so much with consultancies and get more of my direct clients. I'd achieved that. I'd achieved that shift towards more direct work. I said I wanted to make a target around my income. I achieved that. I wrote some case studies, which, if I'm honest, And I don't want to sound big-headed, but I was like, wow, this is the journey my clients went on, and I've supported them in that, and they're acknowledging my support in that, which was quite phenomenal, really. So I would say it was an ego boost, but in a very positive way. I mean, I feel honored to do the work I do. And it really, really resonated with me when I looked at the case studies, for example, that I sent in. Wow, I am honored to do this work. I work with I feel moved by my clients. I work with some phenomenal clients, and they are doing amazing things in the world. So I felt like I was almost acknowledging them as well by putting the entry in.
So what was the evening like for you?
So what was the evening like? So I would say part of the process for me was with the National Facilitator Awards, I think I wanted to win. So I went with attitude, I want to win. Even though I'm saying I didn't see it as competitive, there was like a little, well, maybe I will get chosen, maybe I won't, but maybe I will. I was really hoping I would, and I didn't. So that was a bit tough. So for this time, I went through this process of, oh, it's fantastic to be shortlisted. And I looked at the other coaches who were shortlisted, all of whom were really phenomenal coaches doing amazing things in the world. And of course, Henriette, my colleague from Sister Snog, she's a friend. So it was like, oh, this could be a bit weird. But actually, we spoke about it and it wasn't weird at all. It was just like it's not the best person's going to win. We're all winners, actually, by getting shortlisted. So by the time I got to the awards, I really wasn't attached to who won, which I think was why when I won, I was so shocked. I was completely shocked because I was so okay with not winning the gold. I was fine with winning silver. So it was delightful to win. And you had to really pinch me throughout the rest of the evening because I couldn't quite believe it. And there's still part of me that still pinches me. And I'll tell you quite a funny story. My partner videoed me going up to get the award, and you can hear him obviously saying to somebody next to him, I definitely don't think she expected that, because my reaction was so, oh my God.
So what have you done to share the news since you won?
Right. Well, I've shared it on LinkedIn, and I've shared it on, I tend to use LinkedIn mostly, and also Instagram, which also shares to my Facebook page. So I've shared it on both those. I have had the most phenomenal response on LinkedIn. I can't quite, again, it's more pinch me moments, the number of reactions that I've had to the posts that I've put up and the comments, and how supportive people are. Again, ego saying to ourselves, oh, people won't be interested in me. People are interested in you, and they are so supportive. I'd say I write posts regularly on LinkedIn because I stand for leadership, and I want to support people to be effective leaders and understand themselves better. But the posts I've put up about the awards have far outshone any of the other posts I've put up in terms of the reaction to them. So people want to celebrate with you.
I think sometimes that actually gives you a bit of validation that often people are reading your posts, they're just not commenting on them.
Yeah.
And then when you get an announcement like that, they want to comment about something like that. So I think it kind of gives you that sense that actually people do care about you and care what you're up to. But you've managed to get some press as well already.
I have as well. So I've got into London Daily News, which is an online news journal. I don't know what else to call it really, but it's online. So I've been featured in there, and also locally in the Watford Observer. So that will be out in print as well. So we're going out to the news agents when that comes out on Thursday to get a copy of that.
Your copy. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So now I want to sort of go back to talking about coaching for a bit, because our podcast is also about sharing top tips, really.
Yes.
And what I thought would be good to talk to you about is if somebody's sort of listening to this episode and they're thinking, well, I've never worked with a coach. Would it help me? Would it be effective? I'm running my own business day to day. My business is growing. What could I gain from working with a coach, and how would that even work? Do you want to talk me through a little bit of that process?
Okay. So I would say if you are running a business, you are a leader. So even if you're a solopreneur, you are a leader, because we have to lead ourselves every day. And particularly when you're running your own business, you've got to lead yourself. You've got to motivate yourself to get things done. So you are definitely a leader. And it's useful to understand who you are as a leader. And a lot of what I do with my clients is help them build self-awareness, help them navigate challenges. So people might come to me when they've got a meaty challenge on their plate. They may be struggling with a drop in confidence quite often. And I mean, I've worked with small business leaders and owners, but I've also worked with CEOs of huge organizations as well, who come to me when they've got a drop in confidence. So there may well be a drop in confidence, or you just need someone to have your back, because a coach will always have your back. And how I would approach working with you is I'd want to understand fully what is going on for you. What is it you love about your business and that you really want to make a go of? What might be holding you back? And quite often it might be yourself that's holding you back, which is where the whole ego element comes in. But also you might be facing some really difficult circumstances as well. And I can support you in giving you a perspective, giving you a listening, safe space where you can offload, make sense of what's happening, and help you get some perspective on what's happening. And then also open up options as to how you might approach whatever situation you're looking at. And often what can happen when we're stuck in a difficult situation is we can't see the wood for the trees, and we think there's no way out, or this is the only solution. There's never, I tell you what, there's never just one solution or option. There's never just two. There's always 3 or more options. And I can help you get a perspective on that. Brilliant. I think also what my clients say is that they sometimes come on their calls to me and they're kind of a bit tired, a bit de-energized. But by the time they finish, they're usually, well, I'd say 9.5 out of 10, they are definitely more energized by the time we finish the call. So I help people get that perspective and re-energize and re-motivate them. And then also achieve difficult outcomes, challenging, stretching outcomes. So things that might be frightening them, that they're fearful of, all those sorts of things, help them move towards those.
Do you think you get them more energized because they're able to offload the things that are pulling them down?
I definitely think that contributes. I absolutely think that contributes. I think about somebody I saw today who actually was quite tearful when she came on the call. And that's okay. I mean, I want to make it a safe space that if you want to bring tears, bring your tears. Sometimes we just need to let go of our emotions, and that is a release. And just releasing those emotions gives you more energy. And it also gives you perspective, because sometimes when the emotions, when we're in the sort of rabbit in the headlights mode of our emotions, we can't make sense of anything. So having that space where you can just offload helps you get a perspective on things and helps you move forward. Comes back
to the old saying from my grandmother, which was, a problem shared is a problem halved.
It is absolutely.
Oh, it's been amazing talking to you today, Mary. You've shared so many insights into coaching and how that can benefit people. And we will be sharing Mary's details in the show notes if you want to get in contact with Mary. She runs all kinds of different coaching programs, don't you? Is there anything you want to share on that?
Well, yeah, I tend to, in terms of the people I work with, I tend to work with leaders who are navigating change. So they're in change and transition of some sort. So either move, maybe changing their business in some form or shape, or moving from one part of their life to another part of their life. So maybe, even on a personal side, maybe moving house or getting divorced or moving to the other side of the world, whatever that may be. But change or transition and needing to take others with them, be it a small group of people or a large group of people. And then the other people I work with are women leaders. And I'm very fortunate that I had the chance to develop a women leaders program when I worked at Penna, and I still deliver on that program, although it's changed. I would say it looks quite different now, but I still deliver on that program. So I'm very in touch with the challenges that women face in terms of biases they face, and the things they have to overcome. And I talk about biases. It's not just biases they might experience from others, but also what they're holding as beliefs, which may be internalized biases they've learned as they've grown up. So all those sorts of things.
Phenomenal. Thank you.
I think you can tell I love what I do.
Oh, you absolutely do. And I think you really got that across to the judging panel as well. And you did a phenomenal entry, and you really did share all of the detail about your clients and their progression working with you. And they shared some
Yes.
lovely testimonials about working with you. And I think, you know, when you're doing award entries, particularly for coaching, it's so important to share those case studies and testimonials so that people can see the difference that you've made clearly to so many people. So well done. We will continue to watch your progress.
Thank
It's
you.
been fascinating talking to you today. And do get a copy of Mary's book, Ego, Get Over Yourself and Lead. It's really good, and it's got lots of mini exercises that you can do in the book as well, which I think makes the book extra special, because you can actually sort of reflect on each chapter and work your way through it. So thank you for joining me today.
My absolute pleasure.
We wish you continued success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie.